All right, it is 6 o'clock. Let's get this party started. First item is the pledge. Yeah, the flag there.
I don't think they're that way.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, it has been a while since we've had a meeting, and I don't have any minutes in front of me to approve.
It should be enough.
That's what I'm trying to get to right now, but my iPad is bunking along. Might be time to think about a technology refresh pretty soon. And thoughts. Talk about banking leave. Whenever you're ready.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from February
26.
26, 2024. Finance committee.
A second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, public comments. For items that are not on the agenda. Going once, twice, 3 times a week. Items for discussion and or action. Motion to recommend approval of a 2025 capital improvement project list to the Village Board of Trustees. Here to speak.
I would love to. All right, this list should look pretty familiar. It's a ever-evolving list of our needs, wants, dreams, hopes, as every good CIP typically is. What you see listed here from left to right, you have the projects as they're described. If they've been completed, you'll see a little check, little X next to that. On the right is the department that it's under, the estimated budgeted cost, what fund category these funds are from, and then it breaks out per year the costs and where these dollars are coming from. So you'll see 2024 CIP, which again is the year that we're in. You see what dollars we borrowed for, what dollars we paid for, or we utilized cash, and then what the actuals ended up being. And then, so for the purpose of tonight's discussion, we're really just looking at 2025. For some context, because I know we have a newer member, we initiated a 2-year borrowing cycle at the beginning of this past year. So we've already borrowed funds for both 2024 CIP projects and 2025. So while that number of the amount of money that we have is set in stone, what you assign those dollars to as far as projects is still up in the air, and that's what tonight's discussion is meant to be. Anything 2020 or 2026 and beyond, again, are just part of our wish list. These things can change from year to year. Things will go up in priority, down in priority, as is to be expected. So we're going to look at that highlighted area of 2025 and talk through some of these recommended expenses. So the first one is the cameras. So this was initiated 2 years ago that we wanted to update and add security cameras throughout the village for our various village assets. Last year, we focused on bits of the DPW operation, a part of Village Hall here, and you can see we spent about 15,300 on that. What's remaining to complete the build out is cameras at the fire department, well 2, and then the remainder of Village Hall here, and that's where we're estimating 12,000 in cash on. As you go down a little further, you can see our first sewer item. So this is the sewer jetter truck for 150,000. This was prior to, I would say, recent history. These dollars were borrowed and meant for a generator replacement at the plant. But because we're planning to do a full plant upgrade at some point in the future, that's probably the more appropriate time to do that upgrade. So instead, we already borrowed these dollars, they're already made available. So I challenged our DPW director to say, what is the best use of these funds? So I'll kick it over to him quick if you just want to give a summary of what a sewer jetter truck does.
So we currently have a jetter trailer that is from the 80s. Looking to upgrade that to use it more. I don't know if a truck would even fit in that budget. Because anything decently used is that price. Nothing that's set in stone for which unit. And obviously, it's gonna be a bigger truck. Storage might become an issue with that one.
What is it used for?
So it would be jetting the sewer lines. So cleaning them. So we can do some of it, but we've hired Great Lakes and they've come in and done other sections that we can't get through.
The last 2 years, how much do you think we bid out to Great Lakes to clean some of that out?
I didn't do anything last year. We used as much like with ours. And then Highland I can get through, so. $8,000 I think I spent for Highland,
Just on that.
just on Highland.
But she's saying on an annual basis, how much would you be spending if you didn't have a truck like this?
I would like to do between camera and jetting like 2,000.
And
And
Eric,
this is what determines what underground utilities need updating, fixing. So we find our leaks within the village.
Outside of the obvious convenience of just being able to get in and drive the truck. What's the benefit of having a truck versus trailer?
The truck would have the back on it too, so as you're pulling the debris down to you, you can suck it out right away. With just having the jetter, I'd have to have a shovel down there or bring our trailer out there to suck that out.
Eric, you and I talked a little bit about the potential to be able to rent out equipment like this to other nearby municipalities. Is that something you would give more thought to, or?
So Random Lake purchased a newer used back jetter truck. They were actually looking for someone to go in with them on apps or parts. But yes, they can go and sub it out. They would bring an operator, maybe 2 of them, and then they would do the work for us. Previous municipality, I had agreements with West Bend and then Jackson. That one broke, that I had someone for backup. When Dollar General plugged last year, I was looking at $1,000 just to get a company out here to start. Just because it was after hours. So
I remember that.
If we were to purchase this and rent it out to other municipalities, do we have the manpower to do that? If you were to send a truck with a person, let's say you, worst case scenario, get a call once a week from other municipalities, do we have the capacity to be able to do that?
summer I could, just because of having summer help here, but other than that, it'd be good. But it would, I would only envision it as, and I'll just use Random Lake, is Random Lake calls and says, hey, we had a manhole that collapsed, can you come up and suck it out?
Any other questions on that?
I'm just thinking about it, it's, so we've got 150 there, and say we're not gonna get close to a truck with that. So, I mean. What are we gonna,
I-
what's the actual proposal here?
I would like to upgrade our jetter trailer that we have. If it goes to another trailer, I'd be fine with that. Because obviously I can get in the tighter spots. And like Fredonia Ave, where you don't have parking lanes anymore. Over by Freedom Park. I'm not taking up such big lanes. Then I eliminate the need for a CDL usage then.
How many of our areas have CDLs?
4 of us.
Out of how many?
But I'll have one retiring. That has it. So
What's the, what would a trailer fit into this?
yeah, I could get a real nice trailer for 110.
Obviously, would it be more powerful than your one from the eighties
Yes,
Hopefully more reliable.
or reliable?
because if we keep using the one we have, I'm gonna have to stick one in the hose. Hose fault.
Imagine. Okay,
Are you? Passionate about getting a truck? Or is this more of like a nice to have would be great, but. A trailer is sufficient.
A trailer is sufficient. The thing is, you start going that big of investment on super generous truck. You have to be out there more than once, twice a month to use to get the value.
sounds like, trailer might be the prudent thing to do here. All right,
Sounds good. Next up is the replacement of the GMC 3500 mini dump. So again, the board knows that's something that you guys already ordered. So it's earmarked here. I'm gonna skip over Freedom Park bathroom because that'll be a larger discussion we'll get to in a minute. Next is the Fire Command Vehicle 656. This was again on the original CIP that we planned when we borrowed the dollars last year. And I'll let the fire chief give a quick update on that vehicle.
So the vehicle we purchased, let's say like 2014, it was used, so it's a 2008 Ford Expedition that we purchased used. 17 years old, due for replacement. I believe it has 140,000 miles on it now. I just got a new quote for a Chevy Suburban to replace it for probably $65,000. And that's more down the lines of a fleet vehicle type, stripped down, it adds to air conditioning, but it doesn't have everything that we have. This one was used, I had to go that route as well, they go to a used vehicle, but then you're getting all the fluff on that these higher end SUVs have, which I haven't needed. So right now Chevy was at 65,000, that's without any light packages or anything, and that's something that would be more around the 70,000 range now, once we get it, licensed.
Chief, I know your current vehicle is in pretty good condition. Is that something that you look at trading in then or selling?
Yeah, trade, sell it, or air grade, eventually.
Okay.
But
I'm just saying if you're blocked at this 55,000, that would be earmarked and you need 65, right? That'd be a way to get those
Yeah.
dollars. So. Any
this
questions?
vehicle is used for multi-purposes, I guess it should. Vehicle runs out on every rescue call, that's every rescue or ambulance call we have in the village, that vehicle goes out on. That is what we use to transport our extra personnel out to do live assist and whatever else are needed. At rescue calls. It also serves as a fire vehicle for the chiefs. If we get a mutual aid call to somewhere, that vehicle is how the chiefs get their transportation to and from. Come down to the firehouse, grab that vehicle, and go to the scene. The rules of the mutual aid system are that we don't use our personal vehicles to travel to other agencies. incidents. So we are coming in something that identifies us as a fire department with their chiefs.
And just clarifying that's separate from the paramedic vehicle, right?
Yeah, it's,
Any other questions for the chief? All right. Next up is the marshal's office roof. So this is a project that certainly predates me, predates probably all of us here, that the roof continually has leaks and issues, and we knew that. So this recognizes that we're finally tackling that, getting a new roof, we contract that work out and sustain the life of that building. Next up is a pickup with plow. Again, this is something that the board has already ordered and planned for next year. Next up is what you see listed as a fire ambulance replacement. So if you remember, as part of the paramedic program, we had already had $100,000 that we earmarked for the build out of the fire station for extra sleeping quarters. Now that the paramedic program itself is paying for this expansion with all of our dollars, that left us with $100K again of borrowed general fund cash to use for a fire related purpose. So in talking with the chief, there's an ambulance replacement that is going to be coming sooner than we would like it to. There's quotes right now that the ambulance might be $450,000 that we eventually need to replace. So the thought was to take this $100K and bank it for now in anticipation of eventually need to get that fire ambulance. So obviously more dollars, more future CIP dollars going to need to get allocated to this moving forward, but this is that first foundational amount of money that we're going to set aside for that big purchase. Does that make sense? Okay.
yeah, ambulance, they had a little bit ambulance replacement is typically you'll see about 10 years out of an ambulance. This one, we purchased in 2015, and then it got an accident up on the intersection up here, and we kept the box on it, the transporting box on it, and we ended up putting a new chassis underneath it, a truck underneath it. Truck itself is in 2018, but the box is in 2015, so we are preparing to start looking at this, and then twice a day that is $20,000 right now. Crazy ridiculous.
So is that something that we would put into our budget every year if we can?
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
instead of having a big lump sum.
Correct. Yep, that's the plan.
Now, okay.
I'm going to skip over the Marie Cross Wenzel paving because it ties to the other one that I skipped over. So let's go to the footpath. So it's brought up at different parks meetings that it's about time to resurface and or crack fill Marie Cross footpath. Eric can give you some directions on what that would look like. We've allocated 15,000 towards that. You just want to touch on the areas that you were looking at.
And so if we start from TPW, obviously there's been complaints because its road is gone. So I'm looking at trying to fix that this year. You go through the maze, you get to the bridge, from the bridge there, anytime it rains, it's underwater. I'd look at starting there first, raising that up, bringing that back out to Wenzel, and then see how far that gets us. And then start from there and keep going. So try and do it in sections, but that's the one that, you know, people are falling on the bridge because it's slippery, because everything rolls up on it, now it's muddy. So I put some signs up, and then we created a little path off to the side, so they didn't have to walk through the water, but obviously with a wet spring and half a summer. So that's where I'd start, I'd raise that probably 4 inches there.
Do you have to do anything additional to the bridge?
Anytime that comes up like that, then they usually go over there and wash that off, just so people aren't falling.
There's some things, some kind of coating that we can put on the bridge to help alleviate some of that.
I don't know what you could put on there, just because that's the mud and swamp that's on there now. I don't know if putting like tracking pads on there would help, I'm not sure.
All right, so then next up here, we have the replacement of a John Deere snow slash mower that we have. This is jointly used between our public works and our sewer. So you see that 32.5 is split between those two funds. Next up is a new trash pump that we had planned for sewer. If anybody wants to know what a trash pump is, I'm sure Eric can explain it to you. Would you like to?
Good. So we have a couple small ones, and I guess to put it into perspective that maybe people have. Picture is basement's flooded, you're got a little pump up on top, put the hose down in the basement, pump it out. You know, those can do, I don't know, Brian, 100 gallons a minute, depending on what you buy. Well, this would be if we do get a big flood, or if I have to pump out a tank, I can do 500-600 gallons a minute to push that water. Do we have one right now? No. Have we had the need for one? It's come close a couple of times. So. I think we have 3 smaller portables right now, that one's strictly for water and then 2 for wastewater. And all it takes is the right flood. And then this would be something that'd be self-priming. You park it out on the street, park it out by something, let it go. Stand there and run.
What would have happened if we did need one when we came, instead of it just coming close those times?
As in what would happen if,
What would happen, or what would you do?
uh,
What are our options?
rental company, but obviously if there is a big storm, everybody's trying to get one. I believe Saco has 2 yet. I don't know north of me, I don't know west of me what they have. Mike does use the trash pumps down at the wastewater plant a lot, just because he's moving from tank to tank. Because nothing's automatic, it's manual. So we do use the trash pumps quite a bit.
When we eventually do. That upgrade, with those pumps to be needed at that time.
Yes, so. The smaller the pump, the smaller lift you can get, so I might only be able to put a 10-foot hose on right now. The bigger the pump, the more lift I can get. So clarifier, we use it for the clarifier, except, you know, I think I was only doing 20 gallons a minute just because of the lift, I didn't have enough power.
All right, so then next up, we have the water tower receivers. Those are the receivers that are on our tower that help communicate for the water meters and things that we use. So that's a replacement, Eric?
Yeah, so we're at the end of the life of this one here, so. If it goes down, we don't read meters.
Yeah. Then next up is a very recent ad, and then we added it today and talking with Strand about with some of their recommendations. So you see Milwaukee Street, water lateral and hydrant. And again, this is with cash dollars within the water utility. Do you want to summarize that quick?
Was it 2 years ago? It was right when I started, so. We had to break over in North Milwaukee Street there in the parking lot. And then. After we spent lots of time and money. We turned it back on and we blew it in another spot. So they capped everything off, the hydrant is the dead end, the hydrant leaks. We were looking at going from the valve that's up towards Martin. Coming into where the guy's service is, which is probably 100 feet. East, north of that hydrant. So we'd stop everything from there, we wouldn't go across the front of his property, his loading dock. It'd all be up on top there, and then that would be new. So I think it shows 2 breaks. I think one underneath his loading dock and one right off his office building. Yeah, it's cast. So before Martin went all the way through. It looped through the guy's parking lot. And came out. So right now it's not looped in. Shut off.
This would be fixing that cluster that's there. And then the last item we have here is accessories for the event track, which is just odds and ends for the Parks Department. So I want to circle back to the couple things that I skipped. So first off is the Freedom Park bathroom. So we talked about this again 2 years ago when we borrowed the dollars. There was definitely a need for restrooms over at Freedom Park. We currently drop porta potties that are there. They're certainly utilized a lot, especially when we have events. Eric and I brainstormed a few different places and sizes and whether we could do one unisex bathroom or two gender bathrooms. Where would we put it so that it has the closest connections to the utilities? And really, no matter how you skin the cat, $100K does not seem to be sufficient enough to build out a decent bathroom facility there at that park. So that aside, one of the things that Trustee Bartz, who's chair of the Parks Committee, had thrown at us is that next year, and really each year, if we're going to be investing in a certain park, doing a big project, then maybe all of our priorities should align with whatever that project is. So it's no surprise next year we're doing the splash pad. That's going to be a huge deal to the community. And so we thought about what's the best way that we could reassign those dollars towards a purpose there at that park. And so I'm open for suggestions, but one of the practical ones that we have has to do with the Wenzel paving that you see further down the line there. So these dollars are made up of a couple different pools of money. So first off, we had the original 75,000 that we had earmarked in 2023 for culvert. And then we didn't have enough money for that. So then we borrowed another 75,000 this year. It still wasn't enough money for that. Realized the state had a program. We're banking on those dollars to come in to remediate that culvert. So we were left with about 140K of dollars that we could allocate towards another thing. On top of that, we have what's called LRIP dollars. So those are the every 2-year dollars that we're able to claim and assign to a pavement project. We have 18,000 that was assigned to Wilson, and we have 18,000 that we've already assigned to Wenzel. For matters that we'll get into another day, the 18,000 for Wilson cannot be assigned and claimed for Wilson, but we do need to use those dollars by June of next year. So in total, culvert money plus the 2 LRIP allocations that we have of 36,000 equals that 111 plus 75 that you see currently listed under Wenzel. All that being said, if we pave out Wenzel, according to our engineer, it could be anywhere from 150,000, maybe up to 300,000, right? Depending on the grading and other curb and gutter work that we need to do. So the thought is to take the 100K from the Freedom Park bathroom, add it to these dollars for Wenzel, and have almost 300K just to make sure that we do Wenzel right. So that'd be paving it out all the way through up the road. And ideally getting that parking lot done too, to allow them to be the perfect kind of new entryway to the splash pad that we have there. In a perfect world, if our bids come under and we spend less than about 300K, then hopefully we can start to allocate it towards other dry play things like a playground, or we talked about a gazebo there, or other things like that in that park. So that's my long-winded summary of what I would recommend you doing with those dollars, but that's really where I wanted to turn over to you guys and see if you have any other thoughts.
So capitalize a little bit on what Administrator said from the park committee side, and I speak for myself, I don't speak for Deanna Valley with this. As we're going through the budget season and we're looking at, social media and what the village wants and, everything about our parks. We're doing so much of like, well, let's do a little bit here, let's do a little bit there. Well, we're fixing one thing, but it's not big picture. We want to do some things at Freedom Park, some things at Stony Creek. We want to do things at, Splash Zone and Fireman's Park, and how do we go about this to make the right way? That's what I've been trying to wrap my brain on and figure out instead of just band-aiding things here and there. And let's do a little bit here, make it look pretty for a year, but then maybe next year we're gonna redo something different. So that's where the thought process was going on. Let's take maybe one park a year and really focus our efforts on that, and let's upgrade it, make it great. Even that we're doing the splash zone in 2025, that would be a great opportunity to really kind of focus our first efforts to make that great. You know, the last thing that we wanna do is open it. Splash pad and people go, that's great, but the parking lot's still poop, or the road is still poop, but. You know, how do we make it brand within budget for some reason? Without having that kind of half completed park. Like some of our other ones where we need, you know, upgrades and facelifts.
If you consider making Wenzel with a rural profile instead of river.
That would obviously be ideal if we can. There's already existing utilities that are there, right? There's the stormwater drains that I think they go all the way up, right, to the parking lot, Eric?
It stops at the bend and then starts again. Right by the disc golf.
Mhm.
We got hit this on the door.
No, at the gap there that Straps has and then Crass, there's nothing there. So it's at the start of the road and then at the end.
You could get to the park. Lot cheaper if we didn't do. We did a rural profile.
And I agree, that's our original intention. That's what we communicated to our engineer. There just might be some scenarios where they might recommend curb in certain areas, and I don't know that yet.
Want to put some houses up in here.
Mhm.
Well, you're gonna have to put it better.
Yep.
I don't expect that to happen.
Right, great. Land was over sale in the village by saying it's a big giant enormous park for us. Hey, I can dream.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would like to. Our granted with water feature on a suitable road. Right now, we don't have that. If you were considering, bringing it over there.
If we
all the
can,
way
yeah.
down and down where-
So funny enough, we were just talking with Tiffany's husband the other day, because that's what he had recommended too, especially that bend right there where it's really kind of beaten up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, again, as much as this, what, $280-some thousand is gonna get us. If we can get that corner, that's great. If we can do the parking lot, that's great. We have to see how long we can make that money stretch.
I tend to agree with your assessment. Let's focus on. The big news, and that's the splash pad for next year, and if we. Like I said, making the road nice, the parking lot nice, and make sure that that's done before we open up the splash pad. I think that would go a long way from the public opinion and stuff.
Yeah, I can see some of the comments already, but. I really care. I think it's the right thing to do.
Just so you know, the timeline, again, I mentioned that the LRIP dollars, and again, it's only 18,000 of this, but the $18,000 leave us if not spent by the end of June. So which means that we were talking about internally today that we would bid out this winter, assuming you guys give us a thumbs up. And that way we have a contractor there working as soon as snow's gone. Yeah. All right.
Just continue with the. Porta potties in the meantime, we'll work for you.
Yep.
Some thoughts about that too, about pretty much actually, has anybody gone to the park? In Port Washington at the bottom of Sleepy Hollow Hill, behind the school and football field, there's a skate park and there's, horseshoe pits, I believe, right there. They have, and it looks nice, which is what caught my eye, is it's a porta potty, but they actually have like a 3-sided shelter built around it so that the door still opens, but it's protected. Looks a little bit nicer. They
And then put the porta potties in.
you can put the porta potty in the building, but there's no, you know, there's no wood door on the front of it, but it makes it look a little bit nicer and a little bit cleaner instead of having, you know, a bright blue porta potty sitting in the middle of the park.
We'll wait too for the porta potties.
Yeah. You know, it might be
Just give me the
something-
money, I'll get it done.
Well, maybe this is something that, I don't know if it's this meeting's agenda item, but maybe it's something we talk to the school about with their construction classes. Maybe it's something we talk to the about with projects and things that they have going on, then maybe that's something that we could. Maybe it doesn't cost us any money, but it benefits us as well. Or we talk to Friends of Fredonia, maybe that's something they want to put some dollars to as well. I think there's other ways around it, except for putting it in with it.
Yep.
I think we would do involved in, you know, some of our updates in our parks.
You look forward to us to do things at each other time.
What was it?
You look forward to us to do things at each other time.
Yep.
That's your interest on that, so you really have to.
For the school, we might have to pay for materials, but get materials versus.
And that might even be something we can get donated, you know. So I think there's ways around it that if we're not gonna focus the dollars on putting the bathrooms in, maybe it's something we look at making them nicer.
So going on your park theme this year, next year would be focused on green crossing and splash zone. Would we focus, which park would be focused on next?
Sure, yeah.
Stonies that needs some attention.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do. We had, I talked with both Administrator Jenkins and DPW Director, as well as President Kirby about sitting down and putting together a list of, you know, what is Christmas Day for all of our parks within the village, and kind of go out and look at what's in the CIP, what can we do, you know, is this a $5,000 project, there's a $500 project, you kind of pick and choose a little bit, categorize everything in that love, like, we know Stony Creek needs some serious love. What does that mean? I know we talked about a couple years ago, having that design engineer come in and re-engineer the park, and look at that, maybe that's the next one that we look at. And put some serious dollars towards fixing that one. And not that I want to kick the bucket down the road on Freedom, because it is our face of our village, but. We gotta fix some of these other ones too.
Well, that doesn't look bad. It's very new. Other than the body staff, that's, then that's.
To do so correctly, and we're probably looking at 300-400. Maybe.
So that's a nice plug for the open space park plan update that we are going to be working on this fall. So ideally, every 5 years, you're updating your plan. The villages is kind of behind by about 7 years, so that's okay. Typically, this acts as some sort of public facing opportunity for the public and us to tour parks and brainstorm ideas. And then really all that just gets compiled into one document. So as we're making those decisions and thinking about what we would update, we have that listed out. So watch for that.
If I was throwing something out. The Lions. Obviously do a lot in the village, and they are the ones that use probably Stony Creek Park the most. So, and I know this year seems to be heavier requests for improvements at that park. So. Once we tackle that one, that might be something to do a joint with the Lions.
Yeah, they already have that big slide down there.
So,
One nice piece of equipment we got down there. It's from them. Change the name to Lions Park. Then they usually do it for about 10 grand a year.
And I think if we, you know, if we really truly sit down and think about it, figure out what we want to do with that park. That there's fundraising opportunities, you know, people are willing to donate to our parks. We can work with Friends of Fredonia. I think there's a lot of opportunity there to really get the community involved and do some of this. I've seen some of the stuff that Port's done with this possibilities playground, you know.
Grafton did one too, with all my parks, but we did all the fundraising, we did that one.
So I think with some of the events and everything that we're doing every year. Be creative with fundraising, proceeds and goes to that. Hopefully not come up with.
but as active as they are, there is nothing in their name wise, park wise, for Lions. Most municipalities you go to, there is Lions Park, Lions Den. You know, even if it's just naming the shelter, whatever for the Lions Club, because they do a lot here, and there's just nothing that would recognize it, I feel, unless someone proves me wrong.
They got their signs on the concession stand now.
Right, so,
It's pretty pittance, really, compared to what they do.
I believe that the Lions. Builds. The understand in old fairness for the actual center. I think that would take one of the.
so,
I mean, they have that thing and we can put that down. Anyhow,
or Marie Kraus, I think they were a big donor, right? So.
Yep.
So even a shelter up there, gives an idea.
As far as the CIP, we've gone through all the lists. I've marked that the sewer jetter truck turns into a trailer. And if you guys are in agreement, then we'll move that 100K from Freedom Park bathroom added to the Wenzel paving. So then in total, you have the 700K of already borrowed dollars that we're assigning to those projects. And then we have about 386,000 if you include the ARPA dollars for the splash pad of cash on hand that we build into the budget to spend as well. So if that sounds good, then that's what you'd make as your recommendation to the village board.
Good. Entertain a motion of such.
Motion to recommend that. We go to the 2025 capital for the project listing
With the
with the
changes.
changes as notated for the administrator.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
That was with the command vehicle going to 75.
That's actually.
No.
We're gonna use their names.
I like to keep track of things.
Didn't you?
What's that?
Haven't you received enough?
No, I try and keep track of everything.
Yes.
All right, moving on. 2025 budget check-in.
All right, so it is budget time, as you all know. If we want to start with the budget schedule, this is similar to the same document that I had sent out last year. Trustee Beglin and I met and talked through this about a month or so ago now. Made sure that everything was still in line with his plan, and we've been trucking along through it. So you'll see that in April, we did the reval letters to property owners. In May, we scheduled our open book. June was the board of review with final values being determined. As you all know, we did a reval of the village, so went from 187 to 252 million, not counting manufacturing. Those details just came out this past week. But overall, a significant increase in value. We knew that was going to happen. So again, very, very high level. If our levy, the amount we collect doesn't change, but the value of the village goes up, that means that mill rate, the amount that we tax for $1,000 in value goes down. So we can pretty confidently say, even with referendum talk, right, there's still going to be a decent change in the mill rate compared to if we didn't do that reval. Moving on to June and July, you see the CIP list is discussed. I recommend for approval to you all. July, moving on, Treasurer Depuus and I review numbers, which we did. We made minor changes, and then we have a new baseline for 2025 that we've been working on. Going on in July, we would normally meet with Ellers to discuss if there's any future borrowing and things like that we have planned. We do not have any borrowing plan for next year, just as a reminder. And this month, department heads are submitting their different line item requests to myself. And so we have those coming in. They continue to bring up different items, and we're updating those line items as they come. Moving forward, administration and really at this meeting, we'll finalize what that merit-based wage increase will look like for staff. And then I work with our treasurer to create that draft budget. In September, I'll be one-on-one with the village president and finance chair to review that budget. We'll get confirmed numbers from the state for all the intergovernmental revenues that we collect. The treasurer and clerk work together to complete the levy limit worksheet. That is that formula-based worksheet that the state puts out that says how much our levy limit is allowed to be based off of that new construction. And then finally, we'll come back before the finance committee here to review and recommend the actual budget and set a public hearing. Goes before the village board. They set a public hearing, and then final approval is granted at the end of all of this. Keep in mind, this year is going to look a little different. We're going to approve, in a sense, two budgets. We're going to approve a budget where the referendum passes and a budget where the referendum doesn't. So just keep that in mind. The expenses don't change, just whether we have that income or not. So I'll pause there. If there's any questions on the schedule. We keep trucking along.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
And it's more about you. We went through merit wages
Mhm.
increases. Was at the beginning of the year, maybe, or end of last year. There was an increase that was supposed to happen for our employees in July, correct?
Yep.
And that happened and everything's all good with that?
So that, yeah, this year that we're in, we did a 5% where it was 2.5 in January 1 and then 2.5 in June. Yeah. All right, so if you flip over to the other side, you look at our 2025 goals. So first off, we're going to continue our current level of exceptional services, of course. We have the new joint ALS paramedic program obligation that we will need to fund. We're going to continue spending on roads, utilities, park improvements to provide meaningful impact, a lot of the stuff of which we talked about just a little bit ago. We're going to utilize an appropriate amount of our net new construction levy increase. So again, that's the amount that we're able to increase the levy by net new construction to capture those new developments. We're going to follow up on the TID businesses to make sure that they're developing throughout the year. And then again, after Trustee Beglin and I chatted, we discussed what that cost of living or merit-based increase would be. And him and I are recommending that 4% that you see there. When you go on to the challenges for next year, we have obviously a future wastewater treatment plant upgrade that is looming. We have a sewer rate study that is still continuing on. That's going to work its way through Public Works. And so again, just keep in mind, not that we're building it next year, but it'll be coming and continue to be a discussion moving forward. The state health insurance costs continue to increase. We're seeing an 8% increase to next year's insurance costs for our employees. Again, while it's also a goal, it's also a challenge. We're implementing that joint ALS paramedic program and making sure that all of the revenues and expenses are in line with what we're predicting it to be. We are going to continue to monitor the lab revenues and expenses. One of the things we learned through the audit process was there's probably more things that we can assign to that lab fund. And I know as passionate as our DPW director is to make sure that that lab fund balances, it's also important that if employees' time, right, is utilized in that fund, then it should get allocated to that fund. So you'll see that change in this year's budget compared to the past year where we budget everything into sewer. Well, really, it should be split between time spent in sewer and time spent in the lab. And then finally, our capital improvement plan, there's always going to be more demand than available funding. That list that I just showed you is never going to get smaller. It's just going to keep growing. We know that there's large looming capital projects that's always going to be there. And it's our job to help sort out what those priorities are. And then as I summarized at the end of the last conversation, we have about $625 in borrowed expenses and $444,000 of cash on hand expenses. So any questions on that?
Are you gonna start seeing, or see more of a big picture plan of a growth schedule?
Of course.
Right.
Either you can break it up or yeah, I'll hang out something else. So two things came out of the conference.
He said, well, it's press.
I got an eye appointment on Friday. Get better glasses.
So two things came out, we held a public works meeting, what, a couple months ago. And when we did that, different departments brought their lists of equipment. And some of them had a lot of detail, some of them had missing pieces. And the direction from that body was to, compile this all into one document. And list clearly, what are the replacement costs, what are the lifespan. So as we're filling in that CIP document, right, we have more detail behind of what we have as far as assets. So the first document is what I handed out second. It's this equipment list. So this is a list of each of our equipments, whether it's fire, DPW, or marshal's office. What the original cost was to replace, what we estimate the replacement cost being, the resale value, and their lifespan. Something to note is that just because of a replacement year might say 2026, as we all know, it doesn't mean it's going to get replaced in 2026, right? It just means that in a perfect world, that's where we'd love to replace it. And again, it's up to us to figure out what those priorities are. So that's one piece of your question. The other thing that came out of the DPW meeting or the Public Works meeting was about roads and road maintenance. So one of the things that we changed since I know our new staff came on board here was truly investing dollars into road maintenance. The road maintenance budget prior to us was kind of up and down, and we wanted to make sure there was a dedicated amount of money that we were putting towards our roads. So we decided last year that number was about 50,000. That's how much we're planning on investing again this year. And so what's neat is that DOT has a tool where you can actually put in your projections for 5 years of how much money you want to invest in roads, and then it spits out based off of the data what they recommend you do to update those roads. So what you're looking at here is year one. So in a sense, if you think of year one as 2025, if we earmark and budget $50,000, it spit out $44,313 worth of projects here. So this is the kind of list that I would hand over to Eric at the beginning of the year and say, all right, Eric, you have $50,000 for road maintenance. This is what the DOT recommends that we spend that money on. Again, there might be changes depending on what happens throughout the year. So you can see that it has the list of roads, it has the length, it has the actions with its crack sealing or single seal coating items, gives you an estimated cost, and just a really valuable tool that we can use. And so again, as years change, we can invest more money one year, we invest less, we can keep updating these numbers. A really important thing that I know that Eric's been keeping up with is that these numbers depend on the data being correct too. So as we update our roads and our utilities and things like that, I'm sure you're entering into Whistler all of the updated pavement ratings and work that we're getting done, because that has to be correct, right, in order for this to spit out to the correct information. So just a really neat tool that I wanted to share with you, and that helps to answer your question.
That looks like a pretty decent amount. More of that work before you have it to do. Yeah.
And you'll notice a theme, a lot of this has to do with just prolonging the life of the road. And I believe, Eric, and you can correct me where I'm wrong, this is some of which where you've had that partnership with the county, right? And other contractors when they come in to do various works around the village.
Yeah, so what was your question?
So like Cedar Valley is a great example, right? Where the county was coming in anyway to do part of the road. You want to elaborate on that?
Sure. So you want when I update this?
No, I'm just using that as an example where we partnered with the county to get a better bang for our buck for these road maintenance dollars.
Yeah, so. If I understand, I was lost on some of this equipment that's so old for me. The county came through and asked me and said, they're gonna do the town of Fredonia past half of Cedar Valley. Do you wanna do the other half? It's on the list, it wasn't like dire need, but I'm cutting costs in half by.
It's your favorite project.
Targeting the county.
Are you gonna get rid of that pump?
Yes.
No, there's gonna be more help, so they slow down.
I still.
So now with that, they hit the mailbox on the other side?
To go south on Cedar Valley, stop where you're supposed to stop on the stop sign and try to turn left.
Which way was he trying to turn? When he went straight.
No, I mean, seriously, you can't see.
The one that hit mailbox?
Yeah.
He was trying to drive.
Yeah,
He just didn't make the turn.
I'm just saying that, you know, when you stop, when you're supposed to stop, the trees are completely overhanging and you can't see anything.
So,
Private trees, so they need to send a notice to.
I want to be two-way stop, honestly, because there's lots of kids in that neighborhood, you know that as well, right?
There
That
are,
are going back and forth all over the place, I think kids are going to stop.
I mean, ideally, not only there, but we've talked about this and then I'll bring it up every couple of months about the grant and everything that we applied for fixing farm in that area.
Mhm.
And it would be a complete redo.
Yeah,
Which
I
would
think
hopefully help that both those intersections on Fox Glen and Cedar Valley right there.
three-way stop right there.
well, Cedar Valley's gonna get fixed on the market. For decent. We're gonna make it better. Problem is to go west towards Fox Glen. We're back on the town side now, and that's not approved to get anything done, so that water's still gonna sit there. And create issues. Even though storms on the other side. Unless my administrator is gonna let me put the catch basin in there on the town side, push it over to the village side. Intersection's always gonna be goofy, but when it gets down here, it should be nice for a while. No, they're cool.
Like I said, I think of traffic lights, three-way stop right there. Still
So,
have people barreling down.
so with that, they're gonna fix that. He asked, obviously, we're not paying for, I mean, they're there, so it wasn't much to, hey, do the other half, which is nice. And then, you know, it's the same thing like with PTS, they're doing Highland. For them to move over and do a little bit right here, you're eliminating the mobilization, you're eliminating, you know, all these people coming down, and it's right here right now, so you try and. I feel if you try and take advantage of that, save some money and get it done.
So my point was that we'll continue to do those kind of cooperative arrangements, whether it's with the county or other nearby contractors in order to get the best bang for our buck as we're, you know, getting off these projects, so.
Yeah, so he needs to make sure everything is up to date. In his little computer system.
They'll get there. I get there.
You're going on vacation again?
I know, he always goes.
What do you mean again?
You should do that. I thought you were bathing your PTO.
I am.
For the next week.
Yeah, we do have PTO, but you have changed that policy.
2 days.
Is there any other questions on goals, challenges, any of that?
Anything else on that?
So I have one big discussion item at the end here whenever you're done. Okay. So we all know we have a referendum question coming in November. Assuming that that passes, that grants the authority of the village to increase the levy by that 200,000. We have discussed various options of the general levy obviously would go up that 200K. That's not a question of whether we wouldn't do that. But on the debt levy side, we can decide how much of that debt levy we want to collect. So you can be as conservative as direct us to say that, you know what, next year in the paramedic budget, we only need 100K, Chris. So decrease the debt levy by 100K so we don't collect that extra amount from the taxpayers. One way to think about it is that if the taxpayers are going to the ballot and they're voting yes, they are voting yes, knowing that their taxes are going to increase by that 200 levy. If we don't increase by that amount, while yes, it would provide that relief, they might be a little irked the next year when we do have to increase it, you know, more and more and more. So one thought is, and again, we can discuss it, we can find a middle ground, is we could collect our full debt levy the same way that we did a couple of years ago and allocate those dollars towards something else. What I would recommend in us talking is that I would honestly use that debt levy to pay down debt. You guys have a lot of still lingering principal debt that we could try to tackle. Fredonia Ave is a great example where we're gonna pay, the top of your head, how much we would pay and then how much the next year is, like
We could just
6,000.
pay it towards-
Yeah.
But we don't know what's 50,000.
And it's that payment next year.
I was gonna say, I thought that was coming up
We're
to
very.
be
Yeah.
done.
So,
But
so we're close to paying that one off. We just borrowed for that, the skid steer and other stuff through the public service loan. That is only 100K itself in principal. So whether it's that, we work with Ellers on which things to pay down. But I would recommend doing that because then next year, when we're sitting here talking about the next 2 years of borrowing, we've already paid down principal, so that way there's less of a burden on the taxpayers when it comes to the principal interest payments that we have to levy. So that's kind of a big discussion, but again, voters are going to the polls, they know we're gonna increase the levy by 200K. Do we actually increase the levy by 200K? That's the question.
Sounds a lot like what the high school, or what the school district trying to. Almost a carbon copy of spending operation money to pay on the.
We'd be spending,
Now they won't pay that without bringing.
so we'd be spending debt levy money to pay down debt. And the difference is that the school district has to go out to their referendum, right, for both their operational and debt expenses. This body does not have to do that for debt.
I just want to get into a situation
Yeah.
where. We might have.
But if we collect the full 200,000 and we don't use it, we're gonna set, say we only use 100,000, we're gonna put that 100,000 in paramedic corporate fund
for future
for
years.
future years.
So when we
So-
come up
We're not
short,
gonna take that 100,000 and just.
I could
Listen, we're gonna.
Yeah.
Keep that in that program so it will last. Hopefully.
so that's. If we're going for referendum for the EMS program. I would like to make sure we keep all of those funds for the EMS program.
Yeah.
While I understand we want to pay them, our principal payments and all of that, I think it's gonna. It could be bad. It could be bad for the perception within the village and backlash from our citizens that if we want that 200,000, then that's what we're using it for. And it's only gonna be used for that. I don't wanna get into a situation where this year, for 2025, we're projecting we need 97,000, right? Somewhere, and we're getting that 200, but in 2029, we need 250,000, and then what? I don't wanna get to a point in 6 or 7 years where we don't have the funds to pay for it, we have to go out again, or whatever the case says. I think we gotta keep, my opinion is we gotta keep the
So-
referendum funds within this program.
So what you're saying, just so you know how our accounting works, you're saying that we would purposefully build up a fund balance, right, within the fire fund for the purpose to, in a future year, if we need to dig into fund balance to offset the budget, instead of, increasing taxes, doing a new referendum, doing capital borrowing, whatever. Okay.
That's what I was suggesting, yes.
The only problem with that, which I heard, I can put it to it too. When you purposely spend down your fund balance, that looks bad on your.
Yeah, right in.
Yeah, your
Fund.
bond rating, you're either an A or double A plus or blah, 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 blah. If you purposely spend down that fund balance, which they were doing in 2020 to 2021, prior to the beginning here, they were purposely spending down the fund balance because it was high. When we got re-rated for our bond rating, they looked at that and said, eh. So there's kind of a catch-22 on it.
Does that apply to a separate fund such as this one?
So
I mean,
Yeah, they look it up.
they look at all sorts.
See, look at all.
I mean, they don't look at like, oh, this was a referendum, they're trying to, be whatever with your money, they see it as a fund balance, and why are you spending your fund?
The other thing, and I don't have the notes in front of me, I should. Wendy mentioned that we are
low on our fund balance actually. What are we doing about that?
Talking about in general or related to this conversation?
I guess maybe that's a separate conversation, but
So I would.
we're talking about all kinds of funds here, so.
So we've tackled that in this year already. So if you remember in each of the funds, we have that contingency line item. That is us saving for a rainy day, which in a perfect world, if we don't spend that down. Now back up in 2023, we did spend that down. In 2024, we've not dug into our contingency funds. So if your revenue. So if your revenues and expenses are correct, we're gonna be left over on purpose, that contingency fund, which in a sense helps to build our fund balance. So we have that in the general fund, we have that in the water fund, and we have that in the sewer fund. We don't yet have that in fire.
Yes, about registers.
Yep.
You start making motion, you do it, they don't do it. Well, we have a policy of that we maintain a certain amount. Need to maintain that.
Mhm.
I mean, we asked how to take a look at this and go through everything and tell us how we can fund this. And he gave it an answer, you can't tell me. But that may not be the best way to fund. Yeah, I agree with Tiffany, if we're not giving money to it, yeah. Paramedics that should get saved in the special fund. For paramedics to get interest and keeps the townships, makes it happen because it's.
What would happen if? Hypothetical, super hypothetical, I don't even know if this is a possibility. We're saying we need 97,000 for 2025. What if we get halfway through 2025 and we go, oh, we really need 150? And now we took that 103 and already paid it towards something else, and now we're short 53,000, then what do we do? And is that even, I don't know if it's a possibility happening, but are we screwed?
Well, it wouldn't just be us, it'd be all four municipalities that might be screwed in that scenario. I mean, we don't have to pay down debt, January 1st, right? We could hold the money until the end of the year to see how things are. As long as we're making, our minimum payments that are required, so. I guess, is there any concern from a taxpayer standpoint that if we collected all the dollars and we left it to the paramedic fund balance, is there any concern that the taxpayers might think we have a slush fund for paramedics? I mean, we know why we have it for that rainy day, but I know there was a concern that was brought up at the village board level too.
Yeah, I think
Reserve fund,
Mhm.
I think, and again, this is my opinion, you guys, and I wasn't at the listening session, so you guys might have a little bit more insight. But from a perception standpoint, if I were to see, oh yeah, you got 100,000 left for the program versus, oh, you got 100,000 left for the program, but you're gonna pay off, 6 other things with that money. I'd rather see it sit in the fund for the program, because then I know it's gonna get used in future years.
So again, I just want to clarify we are raising if the referendum passes, we are raising the general levy by 200K. We just are. So that amount is not what's in question. The question is whether you want to collect 200K or the difference in debt levy to assign to something else. You know what I'm saying? The levy is going to go up by 200K. That amount can go towards the program. But do you want to lower the debt levy to help your taxpayers out, or do you want to continue to earmark the full amount of debt levy that we're allowed to collect for another purpose? And I'm sorry if that wasn't.
Yeah, if you take that money and reflect it, and we start spending it on something else, that's why we're gonna fight on about that, and there'll be hell to pay. We're trying to explain to him what to do, because he won't get on the.
So
And you're like fire to go, because. But if you literally, there's no start grass fire to go.
Well, then our fire department will be put to you. They'd be busy.
Kelly, Mike,
They're not in the education.
So I'm sorry to get in the weeds, but we're talking about two different pots of money. The general levy, like again, if referendum passes, the general levy will go up by 200K. Great, we can earmark, if you want to earmark the full amount towards the paramedic program, we can do just that. The question is, do you want to decrease the debt levy to provide that relief as if we were only spending 100K? Or do you still want to collect it to pay down debt? That was my question. But you don't have to do the full amount. You don't have to claim that full amount. What I'm saying.
It takes 3 years to get up to 1,400, you're gonna be increasing the levy every year for 3 years. I mean, that's gonna be the result.
Yeah, I struggle on both sides, you know, it'd be nice to give everybody a break. Lower that mill rate. But on the other hand, we do have debt that needs to be paid. And we're gonna have more debt in a year or two, you know, as the next, you know, CIP comes through. So to me, as I do with my personal finances too, I try to pay down as much debt as possible, try to reduce that debt. So I mean, I don't think it's gonna be a huge difference to I mean, the amount that we would be able to lower, I don't think it's gonna be a huge difference to the taxpayers in relation to what we would be able to do as stewards of the money and pay down the debt. Long way of saying, I kind of think we should maintain the levy. And I'm just one person here, so.
Thank God we're all just one person.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to lower that mill rate to 0, but you know, we know that's not.
We haven't looked at industrial park and close that early, and we get probably 2 months off, you know. You know, once that goes into the general fund. So the last one was, it went up $2.20, or down $2.20 when they closed your issue itself. Guess I'm sure the same thing, I don't know, there'll probably be 10 years before that, not more. But that's what we can look forward to.
Can we make a happy medium? Is there a happy medium?
You can do whatever you want.
You not take.
I think
$100?
I'm half married.
You take a lot, do you take?
You're saying I only levy if the referendum approves 200,000, are you saying we only take 100 or
Yeah.
150? The only problem with that is if you don't take what you're allowed to take, the state will say, oh, you don't need it, and then
That's
they
the-
will just. So-
That's the general levy. I think you're saying.
I'm saying from the debt levy.
Yeah.
So if we don't lower the debt levy. Back to 200, what if we lower it to 100? We're still able to pay off a little bit of debt. We're still holding true to the referendum and what we're trying to do with that.
So if you remember, Todd gave you guys that table at the last meeting. So in his table, I mean, he just assumed that we're levying the full amount. So you saw a debt levy section, you saw referendum levy, and the general fund. So even in that scope that you looked at and you guys approved, right, was collecting everything. So yeah, you absolutely could direct staff to say, well, we want you to collect less in debt levy, that's fine. But just know that you guys have already kind of looked at that math, shakes out to be, what, 74 cents for $1,000 of value.
Yeah, that's exactly what Sandy was, a few years before she left, she was not levying the whole debt. Now we're sitting there wondering, well, how come we can't afford this, how come we can't afford that? Every other village we lose, and then, you know, we found out that we were losing $250,000 a year. Now, this goes along the same way. If we keep that money, and keep levying that money and put it in the fund. It can't come back and bite us in the ass.
Okay, that position,
Well, this isn't really.
very much.
Well, it's a budget check-in, it's direction for. Yeah.
That's just.
Yeah, to Melissa's point, we don't need official motion. You're just providing direction for us as we build the budget and eventually fill out the levy limit worksheet.
Get the bill, whatever it is, I don't wanna be like, oh.
That's the hard part of this job is sometimes the gut just hurts.
How long did that first one last that we did when we let the whole debt levy?
How long did what?
First year. They complained like crazy for a while, and then within that year, it became normal. You didn't hear much about it, and
And this isn't even that, right? The voters are going to the polls knowing what they're voting for and knowing what the tax impact's gonna be. If we collect less, then really they're saying, yes, please collect the extra 200K from me, but we only end up collecting 150.
yeah,
That's in a sense what you're correct.
where did we pull it, it was gonna cost this much? No. I'm not sure.
So if we, as a committee, decide and say go full. And we talk about it at the board meeting next, and they say. Cut back. What happens? What do we do? Well, there is.
Well, I would probably, the next step here would be to go to Todd with Ellers and say, okay, if we collect an extra 100K, right? For the in-debt levy, what would you recommend we pay down? And he might say, some things you're restricted from paying right now. Some things it doesn't make sense to pay. It's gonna make a little impact if you pay it down right now, or these 3 things you should pay. So he might he might counter us and say, well, it doesn't really make sense to do that. Maybe only collect 70. Or 2, if you give us a direction that you don't want to do that anymore, well, then that's fine. It's just less we're gonna be paying down. So it's not that hard, is what I'm saying.
We've got some pretty good interest rates on money that's out right now.
Mhm.
Or can you take some of that money and just pay cash for something rather than.
Right.
Rather than borrowing.
Yep.
At some point in the future. Oh.
And we're already pretty much borrowed for 2025.
Rather than borrow, yeah, but maybe rather than borrow. Fix or, we could use that money towards something else to reduce future borrowing. If it doesn't pay up, makes sense to pay up.
I mean, if our financial advisor says, yeah, it doesn't make sense to pay down the debt, okay. That's why we hire him. That's.
Yeah.
He's smarter than us in that category.
The point is that it would give us the same level of flexibility that it did in the, what year did I come on, 2023, in the 2023 budget. If you guys remember who was here, I think Rick, it might have just been you and I and these guys. But remember when I first showed that scenario, right, we increased our cash on hand capacity by what, 200 some $1,000, whatever it was. And that provided the ways that we're now investing in roads and staff and training and equipment. So just know that we have flexibility within the amount of money that we'd be collecting. It doesn't have to be just for that necessarily.
Yeah, we were in telecom there for a couple of years.
So. Let's. I think I feel that we're leaning towards, let's go the full amount right now. It's kind of the general feel I'm getting, even, you're not 100%.
I don't 100% love it, but.
I think we just need
but
to do the whole.
yeah.
Okay, that's all I had. The next step, like I said, is that we would, I'm going to split back to the schedule here. We are awaiting a lot of the intergovernmental revenues that'll be coming in. The levy limit worksheet will come out here in September. Department heads will continue to meet with myself and Melissa to iron out those line items. And so we'll plan on bringing a draft to you guys. Ideally, early October is what I'm thinking. And so for those who were here last year, there's a difference between our spreadsheets and our budget book, right? The budget book is the fancy way that we show everything. The spreadsheets are the nitty gritty, all the line items. So what we did last year is we brought to the finance committee the actual line items and went through it line by line. And then by the time it got to the village board, it was that fancy budget book document. So we'll plan in October us meeting again, unless there's an emergency that comes up or another big decision that needs to get made. And we'll go from there.
All right. I don't believe we have any correspondence to discuss. Future consideration outside of what's already been discussed. Nothing? All right,
Make a motion to adjourn. Sorry.
all in favor?
Right.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Did you see what I wrote on there, operator? I'll take that sheet back though.